Hi, everyone. This is the acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we're going to take a look at Mercury in the sign of Leo. So this is the part of my Planets and Profile series. We've been taking all of the planets through the 12 signs. We went through Venus and Mars, I think, in 2019, and this year I'm spending a little bit of time with Mercury through all of the 12 signs. So Mercury's in Leo right now. It recently ingressed into Leo here in the summer of 2020. So if you're listening to this later, this is evergreen content, which means we're really just talking about the meaning of Mercury in this sign in general. As always, there's going to be a few things that I run through to help you understand the basic qualities of Leo and how that sign of Leo is going to modify or kind of qualify Mercury's expression. Before we do so, let's just refresh on some of the things that Mercury represents. So not everybody knows this, but Mercury is not just related to communication, although one of the main, maybe easiest ways of interpreting Mercury in a birth chart is going to be to talk about a person's communication style or their mental, intellectual disposition. You might even call it their mental temperament. Mercury was actually used in the calculation of temperament along with the moon and the ascendant in ancient astrology. And so it certainly plays a big role in describing a person's way of communicating themselves in the world, way of thinking and interacting with, sorting the data around them, and sort of interpreting it in terms of a kind of mental ego construct. So yeah, the Mercury plays a big role in psychology. That's kind of how we'll approach it in today's video. But Mercury also represents things like merchants and money and marketplaces and even court games, anything that goes back and forth, like basketball or hockey or something like that. Mercury is also related to highways and places of commerce and travel, like a busy airport or a busy subway bus station, something like that. Mercury is also related to technology and information. Mercury is hermeneutical, which means that it's a planet of the hermeneutics, so the interpretive faculty that we have to interpret the meaning of things and to convey or translate the meaning of things to others. So Mercury is also involved in the charts of things like people like writers, teachers, thinkers. Mercury is also related to craft and skill. And so oftentimes the Mercury placement in your chart will tell you maybe what kinds of unique skills, crafts, or trades you could specialize in as well. Anyway, so in today's video, we're going to take a look at Mercury in the sign of Leo. Now, here's the things to know about Leo. Leo is the fixed or solid, masculine or yang fire sign, which is the temple of the sun. So you've got the fixed, masculine or yang fire temple of the sun. And that's Leo. In the constellation images, of course, is the lion. Now, Mercury is going to express itself, therefore, through the qualities of the temple that Mercury is in. In this case, the solar qualities will be a really important part of how Mercury expresses itself. So one thing that can help is to understand the qualities of the sun, and the other thing is to understand some of the qualities of Leo together. Remember that the lion, the sign of the lion, and the sign of the sun comes in the middle of the summer, the solid portion of the summer season of the zodiac. Ancient astrology was built on the alternation of light and dark. And so the alternation of light and dark can be seen throughout the 4 seasons. And during the middle of the summer, what's happening is, of course, the light is dominant. We're on the light half of the year, which is the yang half of the year. But the light is steadily declining in the middle of summer. And so one of the things that I've often talked about, if you've heard my talks on Leo before, is that, with Leo, there is this sense of that which is eternal, that which is bright, that which is young, but also that which eventually will pass. And because that juxtaposition exists in Leo, Leo concerns itself with things like legacy. What is the meaning of my being here, given that I only have a short time to be here? I must do something heroic. I have to do something bold. There is a special sense of calling or purpose to my lifetime that is transcendent to just this mortal frame. Leo's really in touch with that, because although Leo is sort of like the supremacy of the light in summer, it's declining, right? It's steadily declining throughout Leo and moving in toward the last sign of summer, Virgo, where we end up handing over to the darkness. So this is a sign that has a sense of eternal youth to it, but it's juxtaposed by the knowledge of death, decline, loss. So there's a concern about legacy, about that which endures, about heroism, about legacy, people who are very concerned with legacy, and sometimes the sense of having a special role to play or a special kind of authority or power or fame or selectness in the world. When the sun comes out during the day, of course, everything else goes away and just the sun is visible. So the sun points to that which is select, or that which stands out from the crowd. The nighttime, of course, with the moon and all the stars out in the sky, represents the city, the populace, the people, the tribe, the family. And when the sun comes out, there's more of an emphasis on the individual. So the Leo, the sign of Leo, has to do with, how am I an individual? How do I stand out? What is the legacy I leave? Knowing, like every good hero story, that I may die at the end. The hero is always the one who reaches the end, battered and bloodied. The hero is the one who climbs a great hill, who, struggles mightily and often dies at the end heroically, or at the very least, they'll be really banged up. They'll sacrifice it all. So there's these kind of heroic qualities to Leo. Also, the need to be seen and the need to be visible. These are qualities that come along with Leo, the middle of summer, etc. Now, there's the masculine orientation means it's outward, it's centrifugal. It goes from the center outward, whereas the what do you want to call it? The fixity, the solidness of Leo also represents a sense of loyalty, but also stubbornness, fixity and rigidity, sometimes in a kind of egoic way, a self-centeredness, sometimes people would say, a sense of being the end-all be-all, So these are some of the maybe shadow sides. Now, when we think about some famous people who have Mercury in Leo, we can kind of do a little bit of a case study for how Mercury shows up when combining with these qualities. Now, maybe the most important thing, by the way, if you're looking at Mercury in a birth chart, is not only to say, okay, Mercury is going to show up in Leo and have some of these qualities that we're going to talk about here, but also is to say, where is the sun? Anytime that a planet is not in one of its home signs, in Mercury's case, Virgo or Gemini, then one of the things that we have to look at is, well, it's a house guest. Mercury is a house guest. In whose sign? In the sun's sign. So where is the sun? And for Mercury, that means maybe looking into its phase in the synodic cycle that it has with the sun. Was it an evening star? Was it stationed? Was it retrograde? Was it stationing retrograde to turn direct? Was it a morning star? Was it making a first appearance? Was it just about to appear for the first time in the evening or the morning? So breaking down Mercury in a chart can be a lot more sophisticated. It can also be very simple. You can keep it simple too. There's no need to make it. I always tell people, it's like, you don't have to, just because there's a million tools in the toolkit doesn't mean you have to use every single one of them right away. But looking at the sun's position in relation to Mercury and its phasal dynamics at the time of birth is going to be really important. So let's talk a little bit about celebrities, some just historical people that were born with Mercury and Leo who can be like good illustrations for this. So I think one of my favorites is, the most obvious, is Barack Obama. Now, Barack Obama is, of course, he has that total leonine presence as a speaker. It's bold, it's kind of heroic, it's charismatic, but stable. It has that strong, heroic kind of like concern with legacy and goodness, but also a kind of, there's a subtle awareness in the heroism of Mercury and Leo, of the eventual death. There's like a kind of bittersweet feeling. There's a weird, almost nostalgia for the light in the middle of what is being said. Like, here's something bold, here's something very noble or beautiful to say, and yet it's something that will endure beyond me. It goes beyond us. It goes beyond this world. That's that feeling of the light, the sun being emblematic of the spirit and the soul. So, you do Barack Obama, even if it's sort of in some cases, these things are very stylized, but you can feel it, so sometimes people will, comment on these qualities that people have. And I think Barack Obama is one of the ones you can see it the most. There's some other people, another president, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton also had that sense, but with him, this is just my opinion. With him, you have a little bit more of the peacock quality, which is, sometimes the Mercury in Leo kind of has this kind of cocky, charming, bright. It's very bright. It's very well spoken. It's very polished, but it might point a little bit to like, look at how flashy and showy I am. So a little bit of that, almost, I know how charming and nice I sound. You can get that kind of peacock feeling sometimes. Another person who had another example of a great leader who had that voice, that quality of speaking to something transcendent, to the light beyond the light, was Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela had the Mercury in Leo as well. So there's a few like that, and I think it's funny that there's a few. There's actually a few. I found a few places. Sometimes you have the birth charts of nations or countries or states, something like that. So India has, speaking of peacock feathers, right? India has Mercury in Leo in its national chart. And I thought that was great because having been to India a few times now and spending a lot of time with Indian people and Indian literary tradition, like the Puranas and the epics and so forth, it's so demonstrative and bright, and it has such a showy quality to it that, and also this real boldness, this sense of, the wisdom literature, say the Upanishads, the Vedas, a sense of this transcendental literary quality that's very much about the soul, the spirit, the Atman and Brahman, like the eternal qualities. And it also has this very kind of this flair to it. I'm thinking now of the literary tradition in India. So I thought that was kind of funny. The other one that's really funny, if you juxtapose it with something from the United States, is Los Angeles. So Los Angeles, City of Angels, right, has, and that's basically you've got Hollywood culture, right? So that kind of Mercury and Leo quality, again, on display there. Another couple that I thought were really interesting, in terms of like other sort of political figures. Let's see here. No, not so much political figures. I went through those already. Some other people who have really interesting Mercury and Leo expressions. Michael Jackson, Jennifer Lopez, Mick Jagger. Let's go through those. Michael Jackson, right? The king of pop. He got that kind of quality. He's got that he had that smoothness and that ability to be bigger than life, and apparently also could be intensely self-centered. Jennifer Lopez, Mick Jagger, both people who have serious star power, serious presence. They feel like a king or a queen when you see them in interviews and things like that. Robin Williams is another really good one. If you think of him as the genie in Aladdin, which I've had the pleasure of watching a bunch more since having my daughters. So that they're, my daughters are like, they love that genie's voice. And so there's Robin Williams. He's that big, bright, you think of him as like Patch Adams or Mr. Keating from Dead Poets Society. Has that quality of, he can be so noble and so encouraging, and encourage, by the way, the word has the sense of something that lives in the heart, the encouragement of the heart. The core there comes from the core leon as well. This is the heart of the lion. So the Kobe Bryant, if you ever saw, he did before he died, he did a documentary that he won an Oscar for, or it was like a short film. And I think it was like something, I Love the Game or Dear Basketball, or I don't remember what it was called. It was something like that. You watch that and you get a real Mercury in Leo. It's really Mercury in Leo. So Kobe Bryant's a really good one who he had this kingly quality to him as a basketball player. And of course, he's kind of an international figure and things like that. But just this way of being able to, and of course, his voice, like the heroic quality, there's often an element of tragedy too. Robin Williams, of course, he's kind of a tragic figure, as is Kobe Bryant in a sense, as is Nelson Mandela, who was, imprisoned. The heroic quality is really interesting, and it juxtaposes with the kind of hero / tragic, because heroes are often involved in tragedies. Ernest Hemingway, for example, he has that kind of, I would call it a very masculine, almost patriarchal kind of quality to him in his writing. But there's also a sense of that which endures. If you've ever read his work, I read pretty much everything that he ever wrote when I was in grad school for English. And, he was, he was just such a strong, bright, bold, but very, very, he had that very fixed Leo quality, that very masculine, almost patriarchal sense. And then, of course, tragically, he died. So sometimes there's this way of almost, Mercury in Leo can almost take itself too seriously at times, or there can be this kind of tragic quality. Sean Penn, I think Sean Penn is a really interesting one, because it's like, I heard this joke one time. It's like, if you turn on the news and like there's some natural disaster, you're going to see Sean Penn with like his shirt off and like, sunglasses on, like in like, on like a 4-wheeler or on like a boat, like going 90 miles an hour, like right to the scene of the accident, like there to help. He's like, I'm not giving money. I'm here in person. I'm going to lift stuff, like Sean Penn is like, he's always like heroically inserting himself in these situations, which I'm not criticizing at all. I'm just saying it's just so characteristically Leo, let's see who else. Richard Branson, there's a kind of king of industry, Virgin, the sort of Virgin brand, Richard Branson. There's a very Mercury and Leo presence in terms of like the king of in the business world. But you have others that are more peculiar. Like I want to say, don't think that Mercury and Leo is not capable of subtlety. Like for example, Dave Chappelle, who won the Mark Twain Award, right? So he, or I think it was called the Mark Twain Award, but he's a great example of someone who has this very youthful quality, the eternal youthful quality of Leo. He's very bright, he's very insightful, and he also has that kind of peacock quality where he'll really kind of show off and be cocky and smooth and funny and charming. But he's also very charismatic, and he has a way of capturing something in your heart, and that's that kind of visionary, kind of bold. And you remember the sun is the lens through which we connect to higher truth. So there can always be a sense in which these Leo figures are inspiring of some higher thing, like Kobe Bryant, of the sense of having a legacy of greatness, like that. And Chappelle can really connect to the heart in people too. He can really speak to people, but he also has that sense of being like, just fully full peacock display of his own awesomeness, and can kind of bask in that a little bit too. Another one that I find really interesting is Joe Rogan. So I'm a big fan of the Joe Rogan podcast. I know for some people it's going to be like, oh my God, I hate Joe Rogan. The reason I like his podcast, I've liked him for a long time, is because I find him to be refreshingly, I don't agree with a lot of the things he says. I don't necessarily like a lot of the people who he has on his show, but I've always just liked him in terms of like a good Mercury and Leo figure where he's just really strong. He's confident. He's funny. He's open. He's really open-minded about a lot of things, other things not so much. But he has that sense of just that star power when he sits down and talks with people. And I think that it's nice to see like that kind of personality doing an interview is a nice contrast to a lot of what you see in other spaces in the media. So I've always been interested to hear him talk to people and watch him disagree with people and stuff like that. He has that kind of, he has a feeling of like occupying the throne when he talks to people, if you've ever seen his podcast. And again, please don't throw shade if you're not a fan. I'm not like a fanboy or anything, but I've enjoyed his podcast over time. Like a really funny caricature of Mercury and Leo is David Hasselhoff. So like, we're just like, that speaks for itself. So David Hasselhoff. So I think, does he have a singing career? I feel like he does. Maybe he does. Anyway, the other one that's quirky like Dave Chappelle, but could capture something really true, and he also had this kind of eternal, youthful, and slightly tragic, heroic quality, was Hunter S. Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson, the gonzo journalist, of course, who was, if you ever saw the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was about his life, here was a very famous journalist who was totally in peacock mode in terms of just his ego and his brightness and his boldness being totally on point. But he was also very heroic and deeply insightful on a lot of different topics. And he's a legacy holder. But there's also that, like Ernest Hemingway and like Robin Williams, there's this very tragic kind of masculine quality too, the kind of heroic, fall on your own sword, kind of thing. And that can be a Leo thing as well. Henry Ford, another captain of industry, obviously. Magic Johnson, star power, big time star power of Magic Johnson. Here's a few that I thought, one more is Charlie Parker. So if you know Charlie Parker, this is another very big personality and very charming and charismatic musician. Then the two that I'll close with that are, again, probably more spiritual in nature would be, on the dark side, David Koresh. So you got a cult leader, and the potential for that sense of that which is king-like, or that which has a really charismatic quality, but can be very dominant, right? Very like, what I say is the ultimate authority. Something like that, almost taking themselves too seriously. Again, that can be maybe a weak point. But my last favorite one is Hildegard of Bingen. And that's because I think if you've ever gotten into studying a little bit about her, she was a visionary, she was a poet, she was a musician, she was, kind of like a saintly Renaissance woman. And she was a Mercury in Leo as well. And really, there was a movie, and I can't remember the name of it. I want to say it was called like The Vision, or I might be forgetting it. But there's a movie about her life that I watched not long ago, maybe like a couple of years ago, and it was really great. And if you watch that movie, that would be the best. Maybe if we find it, we'll pop it up here as an image. But that was a great movie about her life, and it really gave, when I saw her on the list of Mercury and Leo, I was like, oh, that makes total sense, because she had that sense of being very queenly, but very insightful and mystical. And remember that Mercury and Leo is not just like, let me be the center of attention. You have that solar quality, which is pointing us to things that are eternal. Now that can be one's greatness or some kind of enduring legacy in the historical, the story of mankind or whatever. But there's also often this rare quality of having insight into those eternal forms, that eternal reality, that higher truth. That's something that is part of why a Mercury in Leo lives on, and it's part of why Mercury in Leo sometimes has rare insight, such as, again, like I would say that the comedy of Dave Chappelle is like that. And this is why I think he wins the something like the Mark Twain Award, because he's not just a comedian, he is a really insightful intellectual. Same thing with Robin Williams. His comedy often had this transcendent quality to it. So at any rate, you can play along with this, find other Mercury and Leo people that you would add to this list. I would love to hear from you guys. How do you experience Mercury and Leo in your own birth chart? I would love to hear your own personal story as well. I think Mercury and Leo is, oftentimes misunderstood. It's not always just about needing to be the center of attention. That's a stereotype you hear way too much. So hearing your stories and hearing your own examples that you can think of too, be great to further dispel that myth. But you will see the kind of peacock quality on display. That's what I call it. The Leo, Mercury in Leo has a peacock plumage that can go boom at any time. So, all right, that's what I've got for you guys for this episode of Planets in Profile. We'll be back again doing Mercury in Virgo later this summer. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.